Hello and welcome to this episode of TGE's Current Read. We are your hosts, Sam
and Charlene.
And today we're welcoming best-selling domestic thriller author Katherine Faulkner.
An award-winning journalist, Katherine previously worked as an investigative reporter, an editor, and former joint head of news at The Times in London.
This must be where the crime thriller element comes in.
It must be. Katherine lives in London with her husband and 2 daughters. She's the author of 3 novels, Greenwich Park, The Other Mothers, and The Break-In, which is what we'll be discussing today.
Welcome, Katherine.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Gosh, it's such a pleasure. You've been keeping me company. I did tell you off mic since 2020 when Greenwich Park came out. And I've loved all 3 of your novels. You do mum noir so well. I've written about mum noir. We've spoken about mum noir. Dark motherhood. We've had Ashley O'Drain on the show talking about The Push and her subsequent novel. And earlier this year, I spoke with Abigail Dean, who gave a shout on The Break-In. She, in fact, called you the master of throwing ordinary women into extraordinary what-would-you-do situations. So I would say you're a key contributor to this genre. How do you feel about the mum noir, the growing genre of mum noir?
I think it's great. I think it comes out of conversations that women have been dying to have about motherhood, honestly. And I mean, for me personally, I had always wanted to write novels and wanted to be a writer, but it was really the experience of motherhood that kind of gave me, it was something that I felt something really psychologically strange had happened to me and I really wanted to write about it. I felt like my whole sense of myself had been turned upside down, and that my whole life had changed in all of these ways, and all of my friendship, the impact it had on all of my relationships, with my family, with my friends, the way that it had kind of changed the kind of quality of my female friendships, and like distanced me from some people, brought me closer to other people, made relationships difficult with some other women in some unexpected ways. I found all of that totally fascinating. And it's such a cliche now, but to say that no one tells you about all of this stuff, but I did feel like it was something that wasn't being reflected really in a lot of what I was reading, or just this kind of the psychological strangeness, I guess, of pregnancy and motherhood, and how it makes you feel apart from yourself and apart from other people. How you sometimes start to and you realize you're embodying something that you haven't necessarily chosen to embody when you're pregnant. You represent something to other people that can be hurtful or challenging to them, as well as something which other people almost want ownership of, or they think that because they've done it, they can tell you how to do it, and you suddenly become public property in a really strange way. All of these things, and it's such a lot to take on psychologically when you're going through all of that. So it gave me a lot of, and I thought I was already writing a thriller when I was pregnant with my first daughter. I'd already got this idea for this book, but it really was the psychological strangeness of pregnancy and that build up to having your first baby. I thought this is the perfect setting to, this character's already freaking out about this weird friendship, but actually in the context of all of this other stuff, this is when things would get really weird. And then I got very excited about the idea. And that's just really continued. I mean, The Other Mothers, that was Greenwich Park, my first book, which was about pregnancy,
right,
the strangeness and this strange friendship that develops over the course of a pregnancy that comes out of an NCT group. And then my second
to interrupt you, NCT group?
Yeah, so like an antenatal group. Sorry,
group. For the South African audiences,
so it's
the
National Childbirth Trust in Britain is one of these kind of. It's called the NCT, and it's kind of one of the most famous antenatal classes. But they're one of these organizations, I don't know if you have them in South Africa, where all the women in it are basically trying to get you to give birth on the floor with no drugs.
Yes.
Surrounded by like people with tambourines, like I don't know what.
And I was newly postpartum. It wasn't 2020, maybe it was 2021. I was either pregnant or newly postpartum when I read Greenwich Park, so it resonated well with me. Speaking about kind of those antenatal friendships and thinking about thinking around exactly the kind of group dynamics that are at play, because it's kind of like school. You don't really have a choice
Yeah.
who you're lumped into an antenatal or an NCT group with, right?
Yeah.
So that
Exactly.
was fascinating. But then similarly with the other mothers, you have no choice what mom group you're kind of lumped
You're kind of
with.
hanging out with, because
Yeah.
you kind of go where your kids are the same age and you're kind of in the same place, but you're very different people, and those wouldn't necessarily be the people you would cherry pick to hang out with.
Yeah. Unless you and your close girlfriends all have kids at the same time.
at the same stage, and
yeah.
your children are all at the same stage.
Sorry, so I
I
interrupted
agree. You're
you.
thrown with these people. Yeah, no, with the other mothers is kind of all about obviously the other mothers at the playground gates, and you're right. You might not choose those women, but actually, bizarrely, having children the same age and exactly at the same stage and living in the same area does give you an awful lot in common, like
Yes.
right off the bat.
Yes.
So it's actually quite easy to fall into a kind of false feeling of intimacy with these people. Is what I
100%.
found.
Almost like a trauma bond.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have a trauma bond, and you're literally living the same life in some ways. You know what rash they're worrying about because it's
Yes.
the same rash your kid had at nursery, and you know the exact developmental milestone that they're thinking about, and you know exactly the challenge they're having, whether it's like potty train, like whatever the challenge of like that week or that month is, it's going to be the same for your kid. So weirdly, you feel very connected to these people very quickly, but then sometimes you realize, oh, but hang on, I don't actually know anything about them.
Yeah, and
Really
they might
deeply, like
not
who they
even
are
be
as
your
people.
kind of person that you would
Yeah,
normally
and
choose to
sometimes
hang
they'll
out
just come
with.
out with this comment like
Yeah.
that makes me, I was like, oh wow, I really don't know you at all. You're actually so different from me.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I found that really interesting. And that's kind of what the other mothers is. It's like this, my main character, Tash, she is feeling lonely. She's trying to rebuild her life, her career, really, after having her son as a freelance journalist. And to do that, she needs to find obviously a scoop. She needs to find a good story. She becomes very interested in the death of a local nanny at a beauty spot near where she lives, who died, and it was written off as an accident. She becomes convinced maybe there was more to it, so she's investigating that. But at the same time, she's trying to get her son into childcare so she can do this work. So she's trying to get him into this play group. But because my main character Tash is one of these kind of people who likes scrolling like property apps on her phone and kind of imagining the kind of houses that she would like to live in that she can't really afford, she's decided to put him into this play group in an area that's like a little bit posher than
More
where
affluent.
she lives,
Right.
more affluent. And so the other mothers she sees at the school gates, she is kind of lured in by their affluence and their lovely life. They're really living a life she's just not living. The challenges she's facing, they're not really facing because they just have loads of
Money, yeah.
which does make
Things
everything a lot
easier.
easier
Yeah.
when you have
The
young children, because you
grass,
can
the
have a
grass
cleaner.
looks greener. It is definitely greener.
Exactly. So she's very kind of seduced by this, and they kind of invite her into their exclusive little clique of women, and she's very kind of seduced by it. But then at the same time, she's investigating this murder as her kind of her job, and then she starts to realize that her investigation is bringing her closer and closer to these women, and that there are connections between this dead girl and these people that she started hanging out with. And then she starts to wonder, is there a reason why they have accepted me so quickly into this exclusive little circle? And actually, who's investigating who here?
I really loved the other mothers. We're gonna get into the elevator pitch for the break-in, but it's very obvious that you have this link where you take the kind of domesticity of being a mother, thinking about nursery, going to antenatal classes and all of that, and just immediately connecting it with a crime and thriller. What is it about crime and thriller that complements, or what is it about motherhood that complements the genre so well? Because I think that you've done it really well throughout all three of your novels.
Well, I think it is the psychological experience of motherhood. I think it makes you very, very prone to. I mean, I think you go. as modern women, I think we go through our lives and we kind of have things mapped out up to the point of motherhood. We know we go to university, we get a good degree, or we get a good job, we go into the career we want to do, and we kind of, in a way that previous generations haven't done, I think we kind of set up a life for ourselves before we have children. We actually get into, it's not as if we get married really young and have children and that's all we know, and that motherhood is all we know as adults. We have a whole adulthood before we come to motherhood usually. And I did, and we have and that means that we have a whole set of experiences and freedoms that we are very used to. We are used to being able to go to the gym when we like. I mean, I laugh now. I used to go to yoga classes like 3 times a week. I was so into yoga. I don't know how, I could count on one hand how many yoga classes I've done in the last 8 years since I had my daughter. I mean, I just don't do it anymore. Your life is just, but you have these things that you think almost make up your personality. Like I'm a yoga person and I do this every morning and I drink this matcha coffee and I go to my job and I can work till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the office if I need to, because I'm a girl boss and I do all of this stuff. And then suddenly, and people praise you as well. You get feedback, like people say you look great, you're wearing this, or because you go out all the time, and your friends are like giving you feedback on like, and or like you're going to a class and your instructor's like, oh yeah, you did so great today, or and you go to work and you smash a pitch and everyone's like, wow, you did so great, you're gonna get promoted, and all of this creates your self-esteem. Then suddenly, bam, you have a baby, and your job is keeping a tiny baby alive. And literally, it's the hardest job you've ever done.
And the most
You're on
important
your own
job.
doing it. Really important,
Yeah.
but
Gets
it's
the least
mind-numbingly
credit.
dull
Yes.
in terms of your intellect. Unfortunately, sorry, babies, but it is.
But yes.
It's really tough. It's exhausting. You're doing it on 0 sleep. The job never stops. You never leave your job. You're always there. And no one ever tells you good job. Ever. You get no positive feedback. So your confidence, all these things that used to kind of buoy you up, are no
Validate
longer
you, yes.
there, and validate you are no longer there. Also, you look awful because you're not looking after yourself. You don't have time to do any of the things that kind of make you feel better about yourself. All of the kind of things that you've constructed around your life that make you feel good, like exercise, eating well, seeing friends, doing well at work, reading books, whatever it is that makes you feel good and like yourself. There's no space for any of that anymore. You're suddenly like, no, sorry, you've got to wipe down the high chair and you've got to puree some carrot and you've got to take your kid to the GP for their injections, and that's going to be your priority for the next 24 hours. They're going to scream and that's what's going to happen to you, and it's like, wow, okay, this is very real. And I think all of that, I think the shift from that person that we were before being a mother to what it is actually like being a motherhood is specifically difficult for our generation who have had so much before we have children. And I think that and we just like have to completely change our whole psychological sense of ourselves is really challenged. Our sense of like who we are is really challenged because we thought we knew it, and then we have to just do something totally different. And I think that's what makes, and I think it creates insecurity. I think it creates problems in your relationship. You start wondering, like, if I'm not the same person that I was before, do I have the same marriage? Like, does my husband still want this person? Like this version of me? Like, is this version of me somebody people want to be friends with? And do I even want the same friends? Because my old friends aren't talking about any of this stuff that I'm doing. So do I want the same friends? Do my friends think I'm boring now? Or like, do my and my family, suddenly your family start telling you how to raise your kid and start saying, oh, and you're like, what? No, I don't want that relationship with you. All of your relationships. And so it's like such a so I think the reason it connects to crime and psychological thrillers, sorry, to try and answer your question, is because all of these things kind of put you in a very vulnerable place psychologically. And obviously for a writer, then it's very easy to kind of ratchet up the pressure on this character. If they're kind of going through all of this psychologically strange stuff anyway, and they're kind of questioning themselves, it's almost like not an unreliable, you become naturally, as a new mother, you're like almost naturally an unreliable narrator because you feel unreliable.
Totally.
Yes.
Your life
questioning
becomes a psychological thriller.
You're doubting yourself.
Yeah.
You're questioning your thoughts, your
You're
decisions. You're questioning everything. And then
that's kind of what you want for a main character in a psychological thriller anyway, right?
Exactly.
And so then but then of course you can start pulling out the kind of psychological thriller tricks, but it really works well for this setting, because these characters are already wondering about the other women in their antenatal group, or they're
Yes.
already wondering about their marriage post baby, and like whether you really can trust this person that you've like, you know, maybe you had fun together in your 20s when you were traveling around India, and like, is that the same thing as being able to rely on him to help you look
Are
after
you?
this baby? You know,
Are you
like
this
suddenly,
person that I need right now in all of
yeah,
this?
yeah, exactly. And all of that stuff is frightening, because it goes to the heart of, and it's frightening when there's nothing so frightening as your safe place not feeling like your safe place, like your home, your domesticity,
Totally.
your husband, the people closest to you. And that's what motherhood starts to distort, is those relationships, those closest relationships you have. And that's a very frightening place to be in, because it's the one place you should feel safe. And if you don't feel safe at home, if you start questioning your husband, um, and you start questioning the friends closest to you, or even like, you know, family members, your closest relationships, that's a very frightening place to be in. And I think that that's just lends itself really well to kind of psychological fiction. And I suppose they're the kind of two things that I'm interested in, that I love psychological thrillers, and I wanted to write psychological thrillers. And I'm also really interested in all of this motherhood stuff, because I've lived it. It's been my life for the last few years. So and the two things just kind of connected really well in my head. And yeah,
For
I
sure.
guess that's
I wanted to
why I wrote
say
that.
that I think that when you're operating as a mom, as a new mom, on little sleep and all of the self-doubt and doubt in your surroundings and this sense of not feeling safe, there's also like some dark intrusive thoughts that oftentimes come in, like you're holding the baby walking up the stairs and this weird thought just pops into your mind, like, what if I drop the baby on the stairs? You're constantly living in a state of fear, almost even a fear of whether you're actually capable of keeping this baby alive. And
Yeah.
you have these like scary thoughts that, and I don't know that this is the case for everyone, but it certainly from time to time happened to me and other mothers I've spoken to, these little snippets of intrusive thoughts that just pop out of nowhere into your mind, whether you are suffering from like a postpartum depression or not. It is, your hormones are everywhere, you're not sleeping, there's a lot of instability. You're kind of unhinged almost, people would easily describe you or label you as.
I think so. And as Katherine was mentioning, you've got this, our generation of women could have it all, quote unquote. We've spoken about it in recent episodes of The Great Equalizer, where it's just like, oh, we get to do all of these things and be working boss bitches and be amazing mothers and be sexy wives. And
that's
just
all exhausting.
Have it all.
That's very exhausting.
It is exhausting, but the second you have a baby, it's almost like motherhood ironically speaks to the erasure of women.
Yes.
And then that's the mind, excuse my language here, Katherine, but it's the mind fuck that you're playing with. And that's
it's exactly, I think two things you've identified there are really interesting and definitely part of it. So the first, to go back to what you were saying about feeling unhinged, that is exactly right. And also to add to that, even when there is also the stereotype that the new mother can't be trusted, right?
Yes.
So like sometimes things will happen, and they really do happen. So with my first baby, she had like a really severe coughing fit the first night we brought her back from hospital, and she was actually choking on. C-section babies have this a lot, apparently, like a lot of phlegm in their bodies. And it was like, but I thought she was choking. So I called 999 and we got her to the hospital. It was very, very frightening. I mean, she's a day-old baby. And we got back to the hospital like less than 24 hours after we'd left. And all these doctors came around because she was so young, so small. And they were like, you know, tell us exactly what happened. They were trying to work out, is it a seizure? Was it coughing fit? Whatever it was. And I was trying to explain it. I've had a C-section. I've had no sleep. I'm completely, and I felt crazy.
Yeah. It's
And
almost as though you're
I was
just
the
paranoid.
only one who saw, and I was the only one who'd seen it. And as I looked around the faces of these doctors, it was such a real vivid experience, almost like an out-of-body experience. I was holding this tiny baby who I'd just given birth to. All these doctors are standing around staring at me, and they're asking me a series of questions. And I realized that they're not just asking me these questions. They're not just assessing
the
Was this
situation.
coughing fit? Was it a seizure? That also on their little checklist of possibilities are, this woman is crazy.
Yes.
And
Do we
there was
need
the
to give
first
her,
time,
do we need to intervene here with the mental
like, is
state
this
of this
woman
woman? Yes.
actually, is she having a postnatal episode?
Yes.
Like, is she just, and then I started to think, am I?
Yes.
That's how tired I am at this point. I was in labor for like 3 days with my daughter. I had no, and then it ended in
And then
In a
emergency
emergency.
C-section. Oh, my Lord.
That lost a lot of blood. I was having all kinds of weird, like, I just wasn't even, I remembered when she did her check when we left the hospital, I said to my husband, oh, the baby's kicking. And my husband was like, the baby's out. And it was my womb contracting,
Yes,
but it felt like
Yes.
kicking. And I'd forgotten she was out. Like, that's how
Yes.
crazy I
But I
was.
mean, you tell me that, and to me, that seems like a perfectly normal thing for given where
Yeah,
you're
but-
at. Like, I've experienced
then
that as well. But other people look at you like you're mad.
Yeah, you're mad. And then you realize these doctors are looking at you like you can't be trusted.
Yes.
And it's just like, wow, okay, I've never had this experience before. You're used to being somebody who is so together. You know, you'll go to a medical appointment and you're basically telling them, like, this is it. I already Googled it. I know what I want. And suddenly people, all these medical professionals were looking at me like somebody who could potentially be crazy.
Yeah.
It was like I dropped about 12 social statuses
Yeah.
in the 24 hours after I'd given birth. It was very, very real. Like,
like
even my husband
unnerving,
looking at me
yes.
like,
I
didn't
was
see
the
this.
head news editor of a major newspaper
Yeah,
in London.
I was head of news at the Times. I ran a team of 55 people.
I'm not a
like,
dummy here, guys.
Yes,
I know
I
what I
was-
fucking saw.
Stop
you know,
looking at me like I'm crazy.
And then I was being looked at like a crazy person. Yeah, so there's that. And then also the second thing that you were talking about, like this idea that we have to do it, or we can do it all. So we also, it comes with the pressure, we should be doing it all, right? We should be not only just like having a baby, but you know, that's just a side job to your amazing career that you're supposed to also have, and somehow keep that afloat while you've got this baby to look after. You've also got to, by the way, be really, really fit and healthy and completely
Get your
toned
pre-baby
and look
body
like all
back.
these,
Yes.
get your baby body back in like 5 days.
Yes.
And then also you need to be really, really sexy wife. You have to have a great relationship. You're supposed to be going to all these cool places with your kids. Oh, you need to like do all these educational activities and be the perfect mother, but also, you know, find time to go and have all these amazing Instagrammable experiences with your friends. I mean, it's all total nonsense, but unlike previous generations, we also have this additional pressure where we are bombarded with images of the perfect motherhood on Instagram. And these images also seek us out. They smell us, like these algorithms.
Yes,
They know we're
they
there.
come after you.
They're like wolves.
And you're scrolling in the middle of the night because I thought I was going to read books, but no, because
No.
my brain is dead. So obviously I turned to Instagram immediately.
Doom
because
scrolling social media.
doom scrolling during night feeds.
And try as you might to block it out or ignore it or keep it just on the periphery. You can't. You're affected by it. As much as you know that it's only a highlights reel, it's bullshit. You shouldn't be paying so much attention to it. I certainly scrolled through those perfectly curated Instagram feeds of some of the mommy influencers, and I was just like, why am I so messy and why am I so shit at
Why
this?
is my home such a dump compared to these people?
It took me
And
3
for me
years
now-
to start unfollowing pages that weren't healthy for my psychology, for my mental health.
Yeah,
I have to
so-
just
years.
install
So
it
there
from
is
time
some
to time.
darkness. There's quite a lot of
There's
darkness,
real
actually.
darkness.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And I think that's also like the fact that it's not allowed to be dark is that we're all supposed
That's
to
the
be
thing.
happy adds like additional darkness as well. I remember this one from Instagram recently that got me at a real low point in the summer holidays when my kids were driving me absolutely crazy. So my kids are now 8, 5, and I have a 1-year-old boy. So my daughters are 8 and 5, and they were off for the summer holidays, and they were just driving me absolutely insane. And I had actually, to my shame, because I don't actually shout at them that much, but I shouted on this one occasion. I'd really shouted at my daughter. And then I remember just like taking time out to just get a cup of tea, and on my phone, it's just doom scrolling stupidly. And this thing pops up like, you only get 18 suns.
Oh my God. Yes, I hear you.
I
I just thought, like, that is just not what I want to hear.
This is
right
not
now.
helpful. Can you just not?
You made me feel so guilty and just feel like
Hard
the worst
relates.
mother ever. That I was wasting our precious summer with my daughters while they were still
Yes.
young, primary school age little kids, and we should be like frolicking in fields and collecting like flowers and putting them in jam jars and all of that. And
And
actually, what
enjoying the
I'm doing is
wonder
like I'm
that,
shouting at them to get off
yes.
their iPads, and I'm just the worst.
Oh, Catherine, you've hit us in the hard relates. I do want to circle back to the break-in because Alice is one such mom, and
Yes.
there really is like a catalyst moment when she is like, okay, well, it's summer holidays and she's starting a new job imminently, and she gets an ominous phone call. But I'm getting ahead of myself because you need to give us an elevator pitch so that we can fill our listeners in. Alice is your protagonist in the break-in. We go with her. She's one of those moms that are just like, I guess I should be doing XYZ, and that's the relatability factor comes in. But there's a dark thriller element to it. So what exactly is the break-in about?
So the break-in tells the story of Alice, as you've mentioned. She's a working mother of one, and her sort of very well-ordered life in London is turned upside down when a stranger breaks into her home one day while she's hosting a play date with her young daughter Martha, and a couple of her friends and a couple of other mothers are there. And when this man who breaks into her home, he starts behaving unpredictably. He grabs a knife from the sideboard, and he seems to be heading to the room where the children are watching a movie. And acting on instinct, Alice picks up a kitchen stool, slams it against his head, and kills him. And now this kind of explosive act of violence is kind of really the beginning of her nightmare, because while it's ruled to be that she acted in self-defense, and her friends and family are saying, Alice, you've got to move on from this. She can't move on. And she can't get over the cognitive dissonance of herself as a good person versus herself as somebody who has taken somebody's life. And it's in the newspapers, and there are photographers outside her home, and she just can't get her head around what's happened. So very unwisely, she decides to seek out the family of the man she killed to try and find out if there was some rhyme or reason behind why he was there at her home that day. And as she starts to learn more about the circumstances behind the break-in, she basically starts to realize there was a lot more to this than a random act of violence, a random incident. And it leaves her questioning absolutely everything about what she thought was her happy life with her husband and daughter.
And so Alice starts to pull at a thread that she sees. Similarly, for most authors that I interview, there's like a spark. There's always like a seed that's planted. I'm mixing all of my metaphors for you. You've got a spark, we've got a seed, but when we're pulling at the thread of what becomes ultimately the full story. Moving away from all of my metaphors, in your acknowledgements, you you credit Patricia Highsmith's short story, Something You Have to Live With, as inspiration. So I'm guessing that was the seed, the spark, the thread that you pulled at. Tell us more about the story and what got you so intrigued about the topic.
Yeah. So I love Patricia Highsmith. She's a huge inspiration of mine. And I took myself off for a few days, actually. This is a memory of something that happened before I had my third child, probably never happen again. But I actually took myself off on a kind of mini writing retreat on my own in the countryside. And I packed a load of books, and I just kind of holed up in a cottage for a few days to actually try something new, because I had been working on a different book and it wasn't really working. And I remember I got there and the heating wasn't on and it was really cold, and I was like curled up in bed with this Patricia Highsmith short stories and just trying to get myself warm. And this one just really resonated with me, So it's a short story in which a woman goes to a new house that she has just bought, and it's like her dream home with her husband. But the first night she's there, a burglar breaks in, and he's horrible. And I think he kills. It's like, because it's Highsmith, it's like incredibly dark. I mean, I think maybe he even kills their dog or something. But she ends up killing this burglar, and that's kind of it, except in the kind of understated flat style that she has at the end. She just won't stop. The only thing is that she won't stop talking about it. Every time she goes to a dinner party, every time she goes to a party, she has to bring it up, what happened. And her husband is just like, oh my God, we're telling this story again. And he realizes that she'll never get over it. It's pretty much ruined their marriage, but it's just something they have to live with. And that's kind of how the story ends. And I was like, I love this idea, but this isn't the end. Like, I want to tell the rest of the story,
Yes.
And so I started thinking about how I could tell my version of that idea, and kind of and draw it out into a novel.
I love that.
And so yeah, that's how it started.
It's like playing
That was the
with
spark or the seed or something.
the spark, the
The
seed, the
thread.
thread. It's and the interplay between, or the relationship between short stories and the short story format, and then the novel format. It's so interesting to me how short stories really do, and they are allowed to kind of leave things in the air. This is the feeling I'm leaving you with. Novels, I think, had you left the novel on this open-ended
way,
like, okay, then it would have been unsatisfying. But where, in thrillers, you're looking for that, like, aha, this is what happened. This is the reason. And it is, I think it's quite kind of when you close all the loops and all the questions are answered, which maybe also speaks to your work as a journalist, having those questions and trying to answer them.
Yeah, I think you have a totally different relationship with the reader when you're asking them to invest like 400 pages of their time. I think
exactly.
with short stories are totally joyful to write for exactly the reasons you've just described. You can be so playful. I mean, the best short stories, if you think about Carver, they're just so shocking. Someone will just do something and then you're just like, whoa, and then you're just left with that feeling of just, what on earth was that
happened?
about? And what's going to happen next? And that's okay. And that's okay to leave the reader in that. And then they can go on to another one. And that's the joy. But with a novel, I do think, I mean, people have different views on this, but I try and write books the kind of books that I want to read
yes,
as a reader. And I personally like it when not every single thing, but most of the threads tie up at the end.
Yes.
I don't like it when I've been cheated or there's too many red herrings.
I think you feel the same, Charlene.
I get mad if it doesn't get tied up at the end. I feel this has wasted my time because I have now gone on this journey to try and get to and you're hooked. You're like, every page you're turning, you're like, oh, I can't wait to see where this goes. I want to see how this ends up. I wonder if so-and-so did this. I wonder if they did this because of that. Only to get to the end. And then there's just a complete like bathos. And you're like, well, I'll never get those hours of my life back.
I think with the other mothers, is more of I think you can do an open ending,
yes,
where you're still not exactly sure what the person's going to do.
I think it's also fine. There is space for that.
You can still do that as long as you have tied up enough of
what's to leave your reader with some sense of satisfaction at the end of it. Because I mean, you might want to also leave things a little bit open-ended in case you want to write a sequel to the story and the story evolves from there. So I get that as well. I'm not always disappointed when everything isn't tied up at the end.
I'm quite a fan.
I thought I had done a good job of it with my books, and then I had this terrible email actually from I get the most lovely. I love when readers get in touch with me. Honestly, I do. So I get so from all over the world, from South Africa, from everywhere, from India, from America, Australia, Canada. I mean, I just love it. It makes me feel so happy. Brazil, actually, recently, there's been a lot of interest in my books in Brazil. And then they had this one reader though who read Greenwich Park, my first novel, and they were like, what happened to the cat? And I was like, what?
Yes.
And they were like, yeah, the cat was sick. And then you never even said at the end what had happened to was the cat okay? And I was like, oh my God. And
I
the
didn't
whole thing of
say.
save the cat, it's like a thing. It's like there's this thing called Save the Cat, which is like a plotting guide
Yes,
for writers.
yes.
And one of the things in the end of a movie, like if there's been any peril, you always see the animal at the end, like, oh, the animal was okay. You have to
Yes.
save the cat.
It's like Chekhov's gun.
I didn't save the cat.
Oh my
I
Lord.
literally didn't save the cat. So I didn't reassure my readers that this poor cat who was kind of, I don't know, I guess he was kind of ancillary to the plot, but I mean, I didn't save the cat. So I'm really sorry about that. That is the place where I messed up in Greenwich Park. I should have told everybody that the cat was fine at the end.
Did you respond to the reader?
I did. I just sent them I didn't know what to say. I just said, I'm really
So
sorry. Yeah, the
sorry.
cat was fine. I should have said the cat was fine. It's my first novel. I'll do better next time.
There's a short story in there around the life of the cat. You know,
Yeah.
what happens after?
Yeah, that's true.
What happens after Greenwich Park? Well, the cat.
The cat
you know.
from Greenwich
Yes,
Park.
but the thing is, the animals always know, right? So this cat didn't want to go near this particular place. Anyway, it was all part of the story, but at the same time, I should have just said, yeah, but the cat was actually fine.
It's funny you say that because at the end of this book, I had one question for Sam, and
We can't reveal it because it's going to give away.
It's going to
key
give away too
plot
much,
points,
but I'll tell you
Okay, you'll have to tell me
when
after,
we're done.
right? You can tell me
After.
what I messed up.
And I
No.
look, no, it's not. I don't see it as a mess up, but I am the kind of person that loves open-endedness and readers' interpretation, and for readers to be after the fact sitting around a table going, I think this, and you come with your own baggage as a reader, and you come with your own lenses. Again, my mixed metaphors, man. There's just a lot in there. You come with your own stuff, and you're looking at it through different eyes to the other person sitting next to you who's reading it. And it's so interesting for me how your own psyche kind of fills in the blanks when in such cases and genres where that's not kind of open to you. But we're going to discuss that open-endedness. That one,
it wasn't open. I was just
like
curious. It was just this one thing that's stuck with me. And I read the last page and I was like, I listened to it on audiobook. So I listened to the closing and I was like, oh, I guess I'll never find out about that thing. It wasn't a major part of the story. It was weird how that one thing just sat with me.
And I had an answer. I was just like, oh, but this.
But I knew those answers.
We'll fill you in, Katherine.
We'll fill you in afterwards.
I know, I find it so interesting. And like, yeah, I think that it's sometimes not predictable how people will respond to your books. Like in with Greenwich Park, my main character, Helen, she's a very anxious, socially awkward, not very confident person. And so when she's confronted with this strange girl, Rachel, who she meets at her first antenatal class, who's very unpredictable, very brash, very the opposite of her in many ways, she doesn't really know how to handle it. And I got in terrible trouble with UK readers. I mean, the book went down very well in America and the UK. I'm very happy to say, but in the UK where I live, people were really annoyed with Helen, and they told me, why didn't she just stand up for herself? Why didn't she just tell Rachel to just go away? Why didn't she just say she didn't want to be friends? But in my head, it's very difficult psychologically. Like there's clear rules of engagement. If you try and break up with a romantic partner, you just break up with them. But when you want to end or unmake a friendship with a woman, that's
it's not that easy.
It's not that simple.
The lines are way more blurred. It's not like I'm breaking off this friendship with you, like very officially announcing it.
Yeah, for sure. But I felt like that was almost from some people who read the book. I'd kind of let the side down that my main character wasn't this like sassy, go-getting, self-confident woman. But like there are other versions of women. Like there are other types of people in the world, right? Whereas in America, they were like, but also Helen was supposed to be a bit annoying. Like she is a bit frustrating as a character. But that's kind of the comedy, right? Like she's so privileged as well. She lives in this beautiful house and she just doesn't know how to deal with this kind of working class woman who comes in and is like, well, this is all very posh and like wears too short a skirt to the dinner party and like, all of that stuff. So that's kind of part of the fun of the book in my head. But people were kind of annoyed with Helen. Whereas but she is supposed to be funny and a bit like, oh my God. Whereas in America, they were like, oh, Helen, she's so nice.
How
we love
funny.
Helen.
That's so interesting.
Poor Helen. poor Helen, and she's so blameless, and she was just trying to be kind to this like weird stranger.
Just
And
different
she got
cultural
like,
norms about what's
yeah.
expected of
And so
women.
it was like what women are supposed to be like, and which women we celebrate and which women we denigrate was really different.
Yes.
And in those different reactions to Helen, I thought were very interesting, and what that says about the two cultures, you know, and what's expected of women
Yeah.
in the UK versus what's expected of women in the US. And actually, I don't think either of them. I think but in both cases, there's this whole set of expectations around female characters that I don't think people bring to male characters. I think male characters are kind of allowed to be whatever they want,
Mm.
but a male-female
Yes.
character, a female main character, is like, it's like we have a set of expectations we bring to that for some reason, and so it was very interesting to me, the whole thing.
That is, and you know what? Alice reminds me a little, not of Helen, but I think the situation reminds me a bit of like Alice and Jade's dynamic in the book. Reminds me a little bit of Helen and I forget her name in Greenwich Park.
Rachel, yeah.
That kind of friendship dynamic, because you do find there's one point where Alice gets a phone call from Jade, and I wouldn't have said no. I can't reveal it to our readers what happens, but Alice kind of Jade asks something tough of Alice in the break-in, and I also thought to myself, like, okay, I wouldn't have said no. I wouldn't want to have done that. You know what I'm talking about in the book. I wouldn't have gone to the hospital. I'll leave it at that. I wouldn't have gone to, I shouldn't have, I know that I shouldn't go to the hospital, but I have no damn choice. And so I'm going against my better judgment. So hard relate on Alice. And I do think, Katherine, here's maybe a good time to read the extract that we have pinpointed, because it gives some insight into the very beginning, before Alice meets Jade and more of the thread is pulled. Gives a little bit of insight into where we begin the novel with Alice and kind of her mental unraveling here.
Sure. So this is from the beginning, when Alice is kind of reeling from what's happened with the break-in, and there's a lot of media attention around her home. In the beginning, when the details were scant, a burglar who had died after being attacked by a homeowner, people had been ready to defend her. But as more details about Alice leaked into the coverage, her age, the fact she had got a nanny, the champagne detail, where on earth had they got that? Her so-called high-flying career in the art world, the current market value of her London house, the readers commenting below the line had started to turn on her. Jamie and Jessica are right. It's a form of self-harm, reading the comments. Alice knows that, but she cannot seem to stop. It's shameful, probably, how much she cares about them, the unfiltered, anonymous opinions of people she has never met, most of whom seem to have made up their minds that Alice is a bad person, a bad parent, an older mother, one had called her. Lots of them think Alice is a murderer, and that if she gets away with this, it will only be because she is rich, or at least middle class. She can see that Jamie is disappointed to find his wife is the sort of person who cares about all this stuff, who lacks the courage to just let the anonymous internet people hate her. He doesn't understand why she can't just click the browser window closed and return herself to him and Martha, to the life they shared before. Finding her squatting on the floor again one night, stabbing at her phone screen, Jamie snaps. Enough, he tells her. The charges are going to be dropped any day. We have to try to move on from all this. He takes her phone gently, like a crisis negotiator, presses the button on the side so that the screen goes black. What's done is done, Alice, he adds softly. We can't change it. It's just something we have to live with. Just something we have to live with, Alice thinks bitterly. Easy for Jamie to say. Jamie didn't smash someone's skull in.
But Alice did, and it haunts her. I found this novel so intriguing, and loved how it tied up, and loved where it went. And I find it's an unraveling novel. It's kind of like an onion that you can peel.
Yeah.
And I'm really keen to hear, Katherine, about your writing process. You say you went away on a retreat. You took yourself on a retreat. That sounded really lovely.
Yeah,
You
it was so
sitting
nice.
cold
Never
in the
happened
bed
again.
reading. Yeah, it should happen again any day now. Any day. Patricia Highsmith's short story, you read that. So we know kind of how it started, but what does it look like for you as a writer? And you're a mom, a mom of 3. How do you get anything done? Number 1.
Yeah.
And then number 2, when you are getting it done, because clearly you do get it done, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, I wish it looked better. I mean, most days I have my kids up until I drop them at school and childcare. So I get up early, obviously do the breakfast and all of that stuff, get them dressed and ready for school, and then I drop them at school about 9, and drop my baby off with if it's a writing day, which I write 4 days a week, and then I have 1 day with my baby, and then obviously we have the weekends off. So I have 4 days a week. I drop him with a childminder, and then a nanny, and then he goes off, and then I usually will actually write from a cafe at the moment because we're having some work done in our house and it's noisy. So I also have a co-working space where I sometimes work, or I'll go to the British Library in King's Cross in London. So it's like one of those few places. I quite like writing in cafes because I don't know, there's a bit of like life around. Somehow that I find it helpful. But sometimes I need real quiet. It kind of depends what mood I'm in and what I'm doing. I try and write at least 1,000 words a day.
Wow.
But it took me a long time actually to come up with a kind of structure for myself. So when I worked in newspapers, which was, my career for like most of my career, and for 15 years, I was on a daily cycle or a weekly cycle. When I worked at the Sunday Times, most of my career I was on a daily newspaper. So you made a newspaper from scratch every day. You start with nothing, you make a newspaper, then the next day you start again. And it's very, very fast paced. But there's a structure. And how it comes together every day is kind of a minor miracle, but there is a structure to it. And you know which bits you need to have done by which time in the day. And it all ends up with, you go from the middle of the paper back, and then by 10 o'clock the front page is sorted out, and then the paper is printed, and then you go home. And so it really was a hard adjustment to go from and there's conferences twice a day with the editor where you're discussing this constant collaboration with other heads of department. You're hearing ideas, things are feeding in from everywhere. You're on the phone to the political team, you're talking, there's a lot of interaction. So I went from a career where I was like that all day long, adrenaline, coffee,
Yeah.
Always in the office, always interacting, to a life where it was like, okay, so your deadline is 1 year from now. You need to give me a book, and goodbye to you.
Have a wonderful time.
Have a
with
fun
that.
time writing that book, and no one will help you.
Yes,
I mean,
it's so
that's unfair.
hard.
That's unfair because I think probably if you seek out help, there are people who can help
Yes.
you. Like my agency would help, or my editor would help. But actually, the truth is that I don't know. I'm still working this thing out because I'm only on my 4th book. But like, I
Only on
don't
my
think
4th
anyone can
book.
help you. Yeah, there's a 4th.
Hey,
There's a 4th.
hey,
I'm in the middle of
Catherine.
it.
Some of us are.
For the record, will you help me
Yeah.
every day? I'm kidding. Kind of.
I mean,
It's hard. I know that
it's just,
like not having someone on your ass all day long, or like a
yeah.
looming deadline. It's like, I just need that fire, guys. Can someone
Yeah,
light the
and no one
fire?
checks in on me. Like, I haven't heard from
It's
my editor in like
hard.
months. Because she's so good. She just she trusts me, and she lets me get on with it. But the problem is, like, sometimes I don't feel very trustworthy. Like, it's very easy to be distracted. It's very easy to go down a weird rabbit hole, or like work for ages on something that just ends up not working,
Not
and it's
working, and then you got to
heartbreaking.
can it all.
And then you got to kill it all, and you feel sick because you're like, that was months, and now I have like no time to make this book work. So I'm in that real madness at the moment. I mean, I have a book I'm like 50,000 words in, so I'm hoping it will work.
Nice.
But
Okay.
but I mean, so I'm probably halfway.
Yeah.
But I really should be further than halfway, and I had to put a whole half a book in a bin. It's tough.
In the
And it's
bin or the
lonely.
back
It's
burner?
lonely more than,
Is
well,
it
no,
not
I never put it in the bin.
salvageable?
No, no. I mean, it'll probably end up as a short story or something. I
Okay.
don't know. But
Interesting.
or sometimes I tend to overwrite, and then sometimes you write a lot of backstory and then it doesn't go in the book. But actually, it
Mm,
was important to write it because it
mm.
fills out that character and makes them feel rounded and whole. And that's what I tell myself anyway, so that I don't cry. Um,
It's more of a creative process that you're kind of pulling at, yeah, and
Yeah, it's a
drawing
creative
from.
process and it's very unpredictable. And some days you're on top of the world and it's going well. And then other days you feel like you're just writing something no one's ever going to want to read and it's all rubbish. And you have so much self-doubt and nobody can kind of pull you out of that because there's no one else. It's
Mm,
not a collaborative process and nobody
Uh,
else is looking at what you're writing and telling you, no, this is great. Or like, oh, just change that bit, like you would be at a newspaper, and you'd have
mm.
this team of people around you who are all doing different bits of it. So it's not all on you. Um,
So at what point
so
did you leave journalism to pursue writing full time?
Well, when not for a while, so I did both for a long time, and I still do a little bit of journalism, but it's been a couple of years since I left left a kind of proper structured salaried journalistic job, which was my last job was as head of news projects at the Sunday Times. So I was looking after the big investigations and stuff at the Sunday Times, which was the best job I've
Mm,
ever done in journalism. I
exciting.
loved it so much, and I cried when I had to leave it, but I just couldn't do both anymore. So what happened to me was that I was a journalist at the point at which I got pregnant with my first daughter, and it was on my first maternity leave with my eldest daughter that I wrote Greenwich Park, and then I wrote it while I was doing the Faber course. So that's a novel writing course that's based in London with the Faber Academy from the publisher Faber, and that was great. Really, just helped me so much to kind of it just gave me the structure and I guess the excuse. I found it easier to tell people I'm doing a novel writing course rather than like I'm writing a novel because I just think
100%,
I'm
yeah.
so great and I think I can write a novel. I felt like a bit of an idiot saying that, although I cared less about what people thought of me once I'd had a baby. Like all of that changed too. Like, oh, there's all these positive changes that come
Yeah.
from parenthood, I think. And one of the things is that like all of these stupid neuroses you have in your 20s are like bottom of the pile and you don't care what people think of you anymore because it's really not very important. And you just get on with what you want to do. And I kind of I was fired. I had fire in my belly from the idea of like doing this thing that I'd always wanted to do so that I could tell my daughter I at least gave it a go.
Mm,
So, and I think that really did spur me on that feeling when she was born. And so I spent a lot of time kind of writing in her naps and she would only sleep in the pram, so I'd have to like push her until she fell asleep, and then as soon as she was asleep I would like stop, go to a cafe, get my laptop out and like write a few words. And then anyway, I at the end of the Faber course you have this day where you read out a little bit of your book and agents come in to see the kind of new writing talent or if there's anyone they're kind of interested in or if anyone's writing anything interesting that they might want to represent. And I had this amazing experience where a lot of agents, I think it was 15 agents, approached me after that
oh,
mm.
wow.
and said, we love the sound of this, like please give us the finished manuscript when it's ready. And it was then called The House on the Park, this book that I'd written, which became
Mm.
Greenwich Park. um, And so that kind of made me think, oh, wow, this could actually be a real thing. Maybe somebody would want to publish this. So I went back to work at the Times where I was head of news at that time. But I used all my annual leave for like nearly 2 years working on my book. Like my poor family, my poor husband, like no one got a holiday. I was just working on my book all the time. But it was just something that I had to commit to because I had this encouragement of people saying, no, really, we think this is publishable. And then when I finished it, I sent it out to all of those agents who'd requested it. But then I also was like, because I'd had that interest, I guess I had the confidence. So I sent it out to these two kind of dream agents
Mm.
who I'd kind of thought, oh my God, it would be so incredible if one of these two wanted to represent me. And I mean, all of the agents offered offered to
Wow.
represent me.
Really? All
And
of them?
yeah, which was
Amazing.
incredible. So I actually got to choose. So I chose my agent, Madeline Milburn, and she was just the perfect agent for me. And I just love her. And she's amazing. I've never regretted my decision. And so she helped me get the book ready. And then she sent it out to publishers. And then yeah, there was quite a few publishers were interested in it. And so there was an auction, and I actually got to go around to publishing houses and like hear them pitch their kind of vision for the book to me. I mean, it was pretty dreamy, to be honest with you.
Oh,
I was
gosh.
very, very lucky. And yeah, and then it sold in America and it sold in various other countries. And yeah, but I mean, it does not to say that then it's like everything's perfect and it's like a fairy tale, because actually then you're really brought down to life when the book comes out, because, you know,
You're at the
it doesn't
mercy of the
straight
readers.
away. Yeah, but also you think it's going to be in every bookshop and reviewed in every newspaper, and it's just not how things are. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I had a particularly amazing experience because when it came out in hardback, I was a bit like, oh, is that it? Like, it's not a bestseller. Like, no one's really talking about it. And like, I don't know, it felt like, but then when it came out in paperback, that was when it was, Waterstones chose it as thriller of the month. And then suddenly there were whole windows of it. And it was a bestseller. So like, I don't know, it was really, it was confusing, and I didn't know how to navigate the whole thing, and then I didn't really understand that then your second book, no one cares, like you don't get loads of reviews and attention like you do for your debut. And actually, basically what I'm trying to say is it's a lot, it's you have to be in it for the long haul. Like
Yeah.
it's a hugely roller coaster thing. Like one day you like read a 1-star Amazon review of someone who just hated your book and just thought it sucked, and it just makes you feel like
Deflated.
so terrible. And then the next day your agent calls you and they're like, we've sold the TV rights, and you're like, like this is incredible. And it's just the highs and lows of it are just so unreal.
You know, Katherine, your story reminds me a lot of Sarah Harmon's. Earlier this year, we interviewed Sarah Harmon, and she wrote a book called All the Other Mothers Hate Me.
Oh yeah.
And she was also a Faber graduate, and similarly was a journalist. She was a broadcast news reporter who traveled across the world, and her story is very similar. And I think that motherhood, yes, it's a catalyst for all of these like huge psychological upheavals, but at the same time it like opens doors for, I mean, The Great Equalizer and TG's current read would not have happened had Charlene and I not
Been mothers.
If we had opted out of motherhood, the podcast wouldn't exist, and the opportunities we've gotten through the podcast wouldn't have existed. And so it seems, I mean, Ashley O'Drain, who I mentioned earlier, and I recall now The Whispers is the name of her second novel.
I love that book, by the way.
So
if
good.
you enjoy my books, you will love
100%.
100%. We love her.
So I think we're gonna link everybody up to. I've also written a review of The Other Mothers, which was paired with the review of The Whispers. I'll send you a link, Katherine.
Cool. Yeah, Ashley and also Abigail Dean, who you mentioned, they're a couple of my closest author friends, and they're in the kind of mum noir space. So I don't know what it says about us, but we're definitely like we have some of the same kind of interests and preoccupations. I don't know whether I don't know what it says about our mothering techniques, but
I think what it says is that you guys are normal, and that you guys
you're real people,
with readers like us. So we mentioned Abigail Dean, now Sarah Harmon, Ashley O'Drain, you, Katherine Faulkner. What is your current read? I'm curious. What is inspiring you at the moment? What's on your bedside table? But also, let's not discount movies and television, because Charlene and I never do. What's giving you that Patricia Highsmith kind of calling to sit down at your laptop and write?
You know, I actually don't read when I'm drafting, and that's quite common to a lot of writers, is that you can't read while you're doing your first draft, because you have to be so in your story and your characters. It's actually really difficult to. Now, this is my big excuse anyway for the fact that I'm going to build up to saying to you that I'm basically just watching Love is Blind at the moment.
Nice. Are you a Love is Blind fan?
I watched it recently, but I haven't watched all of them.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I mean, I have no excuse, but I genuinely don't read, when I'm drafting. But the last thing that I did read before my drafting book embargo, I loved The Examiner by Janice Hallett. Have you read any of her books? Okay, so these are like thrillers, but they're so original. She's so clever how she writes. They're very funny, but they're usually told through like documents. So it's like you're kind of trying to crack the case. So it's as if
Interesting.
you're the lawyer investigating a cold case, and it's like you have to read all of these emails or documents. Or in another setup, it's like one of her books, it's like, oh, you're the TV producer and you've been sent this as a potential thing you could make a documentary out of.
Okay.
Here's all the documentation, here's all the text messages, the WhatsApps, the whatever that led up to this crime.
And so you dive into the story
and
in
so
that
you
way.
dive straight into the story in a completely different way.
That's
And
cool.
she's a genius. I don't know how she does
That's
it, but
so
it's
clever to write like
it's
that.
so easy to read as well, because you're like reading WhatsApp messages,
Yeah, I love it. I'm gonna
So
check
if
that
your brain
out.
is tired,
That is like so intriguing because it's almost as though you're like sneakily reading someone else's conversations or like something that you shouldn't be reading.
yes, that's what it feels like. So her first book, The Appeal, was a huge hit. You'd probably recognize the cover if you saw it. I don't know if it was a huge hit in South Africa, but anyway, you should. Janice Hallett, she's a total genius.
We're gonna do a
I
deep
love
dive for sure,
her.
Charlene.
Yeah, she's great. And then I love the latest book by Abigail Dean. Have you read it?
Listen, I interviewed her on it. Charlene listened to the interview afterwards. She's just like, damn it, I should have read the book. I still owe it. I still owe you the
I mean,
copy.
it's a tearjerker.
It broke. I cried. I cried for days after that. But when I finished it, I had to go fetch my son from school, and I ugly cried after finishing that book.
Every time I read
really
one of her
well.
books, I'm like, Abigail, what is wrong with you? But she's such a beautiful writer.
Yes.
I mean, I'm in awe of her.
The end, the last, no, not The Last of Us, the end, what is it called?
Death of Us.
The Death of Us.
The Death of Us. The Death of Us. It was a phenomenal read. I'm going to link all of our listeners up to the review of the other mothers that I drafted, our interviews with Ashley O'Drain on both The Push and The Whispers, and my interview with Abigail Dean on The Death of Us, and of course all linked to this episode about the break-in, Katherine Faulkner. I have one more question for you. Unless Charlene has something to say.
No, go for it. I'm just wondering if you're going to put me on the spot.
I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm opening the floor here. You said you are working on your fourth novel. Is there anything that you can tell us? Any little sneak peek that we can reveal to fans?
Of course not.
Catherine, come on, you're killing me.
I can tell you that it's doing my head in.
Okay.
No, okay, so I will tell you that it is not, unlike all of my other novels, it is not set in London.
Okay.
We're leaving London.
We're leaving London. High-end London.
Nice.
Yeah. We're not leaving it totally behind psychologically, but we're going into warmer climes.
Oh, nice.
Love it for us.
Little holiday.
I love it. Katherine Faulkner, this has been such a delightful conversation. I cannot wait to read your next thriller set in warmer climates. I have no doubt it's going to be another thread that I'm going to pull, an onion that I'm going to peel.
And all of the other metaphors.
A seed that's going to grow into a beautiful novel. All the other metaphors that I've used in this interview. Thank you so much for joining us on TGE's Current Read. Please come again.
It's been such a joy. Thank you for having me.